Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lipedema Wellness Conversations with Gail. That's me, and friends. That's my good friend and colleague, Siobhan Huggins. And today we're just going to have a little bit of a chat. We are going to cover some stuff that maybe nobody wants to hear about, but that's what Siobhan and I do best. Um, I can tell you truthfully that I followed Siobhan several years ago. I started following this amazing, remarkable young woman. I'm saying that as an old woman, young woman. I was intrigued with the research that she does and the way she is an up and coming personality in the keto and low carb and now carnivore world. And when I found out that she was working with Lipedema Project with Leslin as a researcher, I was thrilled. I did a little fangirling, which other people have been doing to me lately, and it's quite uncomfortable. It's pretty hard to go, "Oh, thank you." I
Just
didn't know I
smile and nod, Gail. Just smile and nod.
like, I didn't know I was famous. Anyway, and so I am thrilled to introduce you today to Siobhan Huggins from Boulder, Colorado. She's our research specialist for Lipedema Project. Hi, Siobhan.
Hello. Yeah, so I've been, informally in research. Full disclosure, I have a high school degree, so I'm, what's it called, like a autodidact or whatever?
Oh, what?
Self-taught.
Um,
Self-taught. It's someone who's like obsessively self-teaching themselves things. Um,
yes.
so I've been doing that for 5 years ish. And I've had a bunch of different focuses, so it kind of shifts depending on what's interesting. I've said a couple times, like, oh, I get bugs in my brain. And basically, what that means is I have questions that I don't know how to answer, and it bugs me. So then I have to go look up the answer. So I've done stuff on cholesterol metabolism. So I worked with Dave Feldman. Um, I've done high insulin levels and what sort of impact that can have and what may cause it. Inflammation is one of my favorite topics, big inflammation advocate. And lipedema, of course, as well. And that started because there were a couple people on social media who had reached out to me after I had posted some before and after pictures from a fasting experiment. And they said, have you ever looked into lipedema? Do you think you might have that? And it's like, well, I don't know what that is, but I did end up looking into it, and I did get diagnosed early-ish last year. Um, so I've been looking a lot into that and working with the Lipedema Project and interacting a lot with the community, which has been fun, attending the events. I've spoken at some of the events too, but like just having that community and somewhere I can go and be like, I'm having this problem and it sucks is
Yes.
really nice. And having people who respond to that and be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So before we went live, I was just complaining a bunch to Gail about lipedema related things. And she was like, yeah, totally. It's frustrating. It sucks. But so yeah, it's nice to have that.
Siobhan, I remember meeting you the first time in person was during Keto Fest week, and it was spectacular to be able to meet you. And I didn't quite know what to do because we didn't really talk about lipedema. We were just, it was like we met and we were friends, and it was so cool. And then we were sitting in the living room of the Airbnb that Catherine and I were staying at, and you and your dad were in the living room too, and you said you guys were getting ready to leave, and you said, before we leave, I want to feel your arms. I remember you saying that, and it was like Catherine and I walked over and gave you our arms,
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's interesting because it's like you only the distinctive feeling of lipedema fat is something you hear all the time, especially when you're reading through all these papers. And at the same time, like when you have lipedema, you feel your own arm, and it's like, is that normal? Is it not normal? Like people don't typically go around feeling each other's arms or feeling their fat or whatever. It's not like, oh, can I palpate you? It doesn't
That's
really come up in conversation much.
right. That's actually what you said. You didn't say, "Can I feel your arms?" You said, "Can I palpate you?"
Yeah, and I, I say it half jokingly, but if that could be a normalized thing,
Right.
then because I've had a lot of people, I also offer people to feel my arms. Um, and there have been some people who have felt it and been like, oh, maybe I should look more into this because that feels like mine, or that feels like my legs, or, whatever. And it's it's such a weird thing because when I first started learning about lipedema, I asked a friend of mine, Amber, can I feel your arms? Like in comparison. And it was only then that I realized something was weird because she has very healthy fat in her arms. It's smooth, it's firm, it doesn't have that looseness to it. There's nice elasticity to it. And then we were like comparing back and forth, and she was like, oh, yeah, maybe you should look a little more into this.
Yeah, and I have never really asked anybody if I could palpate their arms. And like April's here, she goes, "Can I palpate you?"
Yeah, sure. Like if we're ever at the same event together, feel free to come up and ask. Like, and I've offered doctors that too because it's like I wish there were a model, like a silicone type of thing that has that exact texture so you can just keep it in your office and compare. And granted,
Right,
everybody's going to feel different, and it's different if there's also lymphedema involvement and stuff like that. But it's such a unique feeling that it's like once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. So it's like
right.
doctors, practitioners, individuals, whatever, come feel my arm as long as that texture is still there because it's helpful. It's good tactile information to have.
Yeah, and my it's really interesting because my doctor, when I finally found a doctor who said to me, "Okay," and I because I've had to educate my doctors. And one of my first doctor was like, "Oh yeah, I guess you have it." And the second doctor, when I took um the documentary, Lipedema, the disease they call fat by Catherine Seo. And when I took that documentary to her and I took the book for clinicians into her and I had her read it and watch the video. And so then when my appointment came around, she said, "Can I feel you?" And I'm like, "Yes, please do." And she's like, "Oh, it doesn't feel like I thought it was gonna feel. I thought it was gonna be like everything in your arm was gonna be like boulders and big old lumpy things, but it feels more like grains of sand and peas and, so there it's much smaller than she expected, but it's very
Mm-hmm.
definitely there." And then she goes, "Can I feel your other arm?" And then she started feeling my legs, and I mean, I just stood there and just let her feel me, and it was such a wonderful thing for someone to watch somebody, like, have these aha moments that this is what my body felt like all the time. However, I wasn't brave enough to say, "Now can I feel you?" You know, because because I was like, I was being felt.
Yeah, and like in my experience, people are usually like if they know why you're asking and it's not just completely out of the blue, they're usually pretty open to it being like, yeah, sure. Especially if you're talking about lipedema and they suspect it in themselves. Like I would just keep bringing people over to Leslyn and Catherine, like, can you feel them? Can you feel them? Because they're like the Jedi's. Like Catherine can just go, no, like barely even touches, just like looks at you across from the room kind
Right,
of thing.
and
Um,
at Keto Fest, there were men who were I mean, that was the first time that I actually heard you presenting about lipedema, and I think that it was the first time that several people, were made aware about
mhm.
lipedema, and afterward, there were men who came up to Catherine and said, "Will you feel my legs?" Because they're going, could I have lipedema? Is it something that I could have too? And so they were concerned, and then down where you were doing the Q&A with the audience, um, I let a couple of guys feel my arms, and one of them said, "I think my mom has this."
Mhm.
So this awareness, um, has to be there. I mean, and I think we don't realize that this is not healthy, happy fat until we're aware that it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, and with the men, like there's another important component to that, which is that the men there did not have lipedema, but they had other fat issues, like redundant skin from a bunch of weight loss. And it helped them with their understanding of their own bodies, like, oh, that's what that is. That's why that happened.
Right,
And just a better overall understanding. And like in my head, I imagine like a doctor sitting in with a patient, and the patient starts going on about how, calf length boots don't fit and they have this weird pain. And, when they get their blood pressure taken, it's really sensitive. And the doctor goes, let's go through a full examination here. Like, let me actually check your arms and legs and see what they feel like, or let's go through all this other information. And that just being a standard thing, because this is not a rare disorder. Like,
right.
we don't have exact numbers, but the estimates that are there is like a doctor's going to run into someone with this, whether they know it or not. And I just like to imagine a future where every single doctor is just part of it. Like, oh, this is raising some red flags. I'm going to look into this a little bit more.
Oh, that's your dream, isn't it?
I have a lot of dreams. I have a lot.
Oh,
But yeah, that's one of them, is just, doctors being informed, because I mean, I interact with a lot of doctors. They come to the conferences, I talk to them on Twitter, we follow each other and what we're doing. And doctors typically want to help their patients. And if they figure out, and there are exceptions to this and there are barriers to this as well. Um, but if they figure out that they can help a patient in a different way, even if that's with some understanding, and then, some initial steps, even if there's not a cure, all that, like, they're interested and they want to be able to do that. So this increase in information for the doctors that are already in a good place to kind of integrate it can be really helpful for them too. And I know a lot of people have had bad experiences with their doctors, of them dismissing it, minimizing it, saying it's just an internet disease, acknowledging those too. And I think part of it is that increase in awareness, the increase in research. And then maybe it's also part of it, just where the doctor is in that space. If they feel already that they can help patients very well, they may be more receptive.
right. And sometimes we want more than just, 12 to 15 minutes with our physician, especially when we have things that we want to discuss deeply. And it seems like we don't get that just simply because of the clinical practice keeps. I mean, I have a friend who works for a podiatrist, and she goes, "Oh, we saw 44 patients today." And I'm thinking, "Holy smokes. That's like 10 minutes a person. How do you crank through that?" So many of our doctors, it's like they don't even have time to really sit down. In their brains, they're just cranking through patients. With that said, hold on a minute. I'll be there in a minute, okay, honey? I'm on a meeting.
Yeah, and I'll add, like, the stuff with doctors is not necessarily something they want to be doing either. It's often how the practice is set up. And so there are quite a few number of doctors that I've interacted with who've left those practices and gone into things like DPC, direct primary care, where it's a monthly bill and then a whole bunch of stuff is included, including setting how long the appointments are. So my doctor does that, and it's like 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes 2 hours, depending on how clear his schedule is that day.
Yeah, and
And
the doctor that I have here, she actually left the clinical practice that she was working with, and she opened her own practice so that she could
mhm.
get get have more time, have she calls, she runs a different type of practice than a lot of doctors are able to, and I'm grateful for that. Hey, before we go any further, I just want to let people know, we see you here. Your comments are here. Make sure you let us know where you're from. I see Um, Lisa, she's coming to us from Pennsylvania. April Sluter's here. She's made several comments. Marcia Black's here. Hi, Siobhan and Gail. April said, I offer my arm up to people all the time. Candace is here. She has lymphedema. She says that's no fun. Julie Rosa's here. She's from California. Let's squish some nodules, she says. And then Mary Mengel is here from Boise, Idaho. She's like 11 miles away from me. Mary Walker's here from Colorado. Tina's here from Indiana. Becky's from Asheville, North Carolina. It is so good to see everybody here from all over the world. But as with 24 people watching us right now, I've only got one heart. What are you talking about? Let's get those hearts and those thumbs up going. We need you guys to subscribe. We need you guys to give us love. We need you guys to give us thumbs up. We
I
have
just
people.
want to point out one here. So April said, you can feel it in my chin. The first
Yeah.
time I noticed it there, I was shocked. Me too, actually, right here in this area, which means whenever I'm doing presentations up on a stage, they've got that downward angle and it catches it perfectly. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. That's so cool. And you know what we've been discovering that lipedema, we talk about lipedema, we always talk about the legs, right? But we are finding more and more that it seems like a majority of us also have it in our arms. And we're finding lipedema pockets here and there under a bra strap or in our abdomen. We have one community member who says, I have it full body, my head, my neck, my chest, my back, everywhere. So she has lipedema all over. And so it's not just in your legs. And so let's see. So I have another one here, and we can talk a little bit about this. Hello, what does lipedema fat feel like? And what type of
So
strength do you use to feel, please? Thanks from London.
it depends because the size of the nodules can vary by a lot, just depending on the person and what stage they are and stuff like that. So it could be like a grainy feeling, like there's little grains of rice or lentils in the fat, kind of lumpy, bumpy, or they could be larger, grape size, walnut size, apple or plum size, all the way up there. But I have spoken to at least one clinician who said that that palpation can get more difficult if there's also lymphedema, because then the skin gets a lot firmer because of the fibrosis, like a little callousing or scarring kind of that happens there. And so that's something else to keep in mind. Even if you don't feel that, there could be other things on top. But yeah, like a graininess, lumpiness, bumpiness. I've also heard and just felt in my own arm, like it's almost like taffy like. It's stretchy, both the skin and the fat. Not as firm and elastic as I would have expected, and have felt in others who don't have lipedema. All of that. How would you describe it, Gail? What's it feel like?
So in my arms, I can feel it's grainy. It feels granular. I don't know, like a balloon that has sand in it or peas in it, like frozen peas. However, in my legs, it's almost ropey, like because I have a feeling that my legs have been under a lot more duress than my arms, and so because of that, maybe there's more fibrotic tissue. But I can I kind of feel like it's like you said, like that taffy feeling, like there's
Mm-hmm.
a stringiness. It's not just bump, 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 but it's more like, oh, I can feel it. It's kind of ropey in there. And then there's been some spaces where it's like if I were to drag my hands across my leg, like run my hands over my leg, it goes thump, 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 thump. I mean, it's definitely like tire tready in there. And I work really hard to break down that fibrotic tissue, but, my legs are since I've been keto and carnivore, my legs aren't as tender, and so I can get a little bit more heavy with my massage. And the type of stroke that I use for my MLD, I use dry brushing on my skin, on bare skin, but I do use a slow bulb massager if I've got my compression on, and I the go toward my pits, down my side, toward my so you go kinda toward your core. There are a lot of good, MLD, uh, videos out there that you can find, and you can always talk to one of our coaches, our MLD coaches too, to find out. Um
Yeah, and then in terms of the palpation, the two main techniques that I've seen is doing like this on top of whatever area you're looking at. So that could be in the arms if you suspect that's where it is, or it could be like at the backs of the knees, at the fat pad right behind the knee, down the legs, just kind of stroking, or like this, rolling a bit of fat between your fingers to feel the texture. And as Gail said, it could be in other places, and the texture could depend on where on the body it is. So I have a lot of nodules in my upper arm, a couple in my lower arm, some in my lower abdomen, and then my legs. Most of the nodules are at the inner thighs and a little bit interspersed elsewhere, where you can do that like flat, like running your fingers, like you said, and feel them. But my legs, for the most part, do not have as many. And so it's mostly that fat pad behind the knee is a common place, and I can feel them there. And then at the inner thigh. Um,
Yeah, and I think because there's so many different shapes that we look like, we were talking earlier today during book club, which is something that we do with Tribe, which is our membership community with Lipedema Simplified. We were talking about the that front curve of the thigh. My curve is really big, and it's been called a baby beluga, like a beluga whale just hanging on the front of my thighs. But I don't have the saddlebags where other some of us have the saddlebags or the big bulbous bum or the cuffs around the ankles because we develop it so differently. There's not one particular look. And so a lot of us, we're like Siobhan was saying earlier, we look like we've just been told we're obese or we have to lose weight and we'll feel better. And we're discovering it's not the weight loss that makes us feel better.
yeah,
But
I was just thinking that, like, it's not the losing weight part. Like, there are some things that can do, like taking some stress off the joints, helping with your gait, things like that. But I mean, even in the studies we've seen on ketogenic diet, it doesn't seem to be related to the weight loss per se. It seems to be overall body environment type of stuff.
right, yeah.
Um,
Um, like loss of like getting the fluid moving, like even I mean, some people say there's no swelling or there's no edema with lipedema. And all of us who deal with lipedema go, oh yeah, right? Are you kidding me? We we deal with swelling. What are you talking about? Right. So
Yeah, ask people how much fluid they lose after MLD.
yeah,
But then also, like, there are more recent imaging studies that use more up to date techniques that do show lymphatic abnormalities and edema, signs of edema. So it's one of those issues, like lipedema was named and identified in the 1940s. If you compare that against like heart disease or diabetes, which we've been seeing since ancient Egypt and longer, it's not a very long time. So we're in a big learning period, and
right.
there's a whole bunch of research being done right now.
There
Um,
really is. Siobhan, do you mind if I drop your email into the chat or onto our screen?
yeah, the Lipedema Project email would be good.
Right.
And then also, Noreen said, does anyone know of any good PCPs in North Carolina? I think that's where Eric Westman is. So I've heard he's pretty good. Um, yeah, there are probably some good ones there.
Yeah, so if people have questions, reach out to Siobhan at lipedemaproject.org. I put it up there. If you have any questions for her at all, she is she's a researcher with us at Lipedema Project. She works with Dave Feldman um, at Own Your Labs, and she has a an upcoming presentation with Learn with Siobhan and Leslin in a couple of weeks. Keep your eyes open for that. She will be speaking at Low Carb Denver in February, and I'm going to get to see her again because I'm going to go. Um, Leslin and Catherine will be there also. I am so grateful to Siobhan because since she has joined us in our with Lipedema Simplified and Lipedema Project, she has made people sit up and take notice. As a leading voice at in the low carb community, she has she has made sure that people there take notice. And we are grateful because some of the bigger, big names that you hear about all the time, like Dr. Ken Berry and Westman and um, eh, let's see, Amy Berger, Amber O'Hearn, they're all now recognizing lipedema, and they're talking about it here and there.
And I
And
will say some of those people were already aware of it, but it's always good to have new people come in and
right,
say, we should keep talking about this. We should talk about this more.
right,
But yeah, Amy Berger has a bunch of good videos on lipedema on her YouTube channel, and a bunch of good videos in general. If you
right.
want, if you're interested in keto, but you don't like all the craziness around it, Amy's a good option.
Yeah, and anytime you have a question that you want to, ask and, you're going, "Well, this might not be necessarily for Siobhan because she's one busy lady," because she hasn't even killed that snake plant behind her yet. She's so busy that she has literally ignored her plant. It's thriving because it does very
That's
well.
why it's doing so well. Yeah. Snake plants thrive on neglect. So this one looking so great tells you a lot.
Anyway, you can always reach out to me, Gail at lipedema-simplified.org. Please make sure that you put that hyphen in there. Um, and I'll answer any questions or I'll find, someone who can, or I'll just tell you, I don't know. But, because that's one of the best things sometimes is to
It's a
get
good
someone to say,
answer.
I don't know. Let's find out about it. Um, and so we do have a couple other questions. But, and I think this is a really good question from
Mm.
Noreen. Do MLD and using a lymph press serve the same purpose, or do they have different purposes? What do you think about that one, Siobhan?
So I haven't used a lymphopress or a pneumatic pump more generally yet, although I would like to. The way I kind of think of it at my current level of understanding, like I'm no Leslin, so um, kind of complementary purposes, but MLD also has a benefit of you're working with a human being, so they can feel the tissue. If you're tender anywhere, they can make note of that and be a lot more gentle. You can be very, very, very gentle in the beginning and work upwards. And with a pneumatic pump, it's a machine, so you don't have that level of feedback available. Though I do know a lot of people that do use them and find them really helpful. And of course, you can have them at home, you can have them in a practitioner's office, and you can use them while working if you have one at home, stuff like that. So they each have their pros and cons, and I think they typically go together pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. And it says, what do you think about this is from Mary Walker. What do you think about vibration plates to get lymph moving as a supplement to MLD? And I know for me, it's exactly that. These all supplement each other. I think one of the best things we can do, no matter what we're doing, whether we're doing MLD, the vibration plate, the press, self MLD, dry brushing, whatever we're doing, we need to support that with other things like compression wear, compression garments, support the work we're doing with a compression garment to make it more lasting, and also our nutrition, keeping our keeping our carbs low, getting some grains and sugars out of our dietary intake so that we're constantly finding the next small step to support the work we're doing to take care of ourselves. And as you can see, I love this one too. Does anyone know of a lipedema leggings that don't make you so hot in the summer? Tina, the only ones I can say is go, if you need to go a lighter weight, do that, and then just keep trying them to see which ones fit best. That's, fit best and that you can that still give you what you need to give because some people have to wear heavier compression than others. And some people wear flat knit, some people wear round knit, some people, wear full stockings, toe to waist. Some people like me, I wear midfoot to waist. Others are able to get away with wearing, capri length. It's all gonna be on what you find that works best for you. So at this point, I am going to start wrapping this up. We have had some amazing questions. Thank you, everybody who's been here tonight. And make sure that if you're watching us from the replay, that you still put your comments in there. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Facebook. Give us some thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Hit the hearts if you're on Facebook. And know that we're going to be back here again next week. We're going to have another broadcast on Friday with Leslyn, Kathleen, Siobhan, and I. And we are so glad you're here. And Siobhan, do you have any last words before I hang up on all these people?
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And if you need anything, reach out to Gail, to me, to anyone else on the team. And if we don't know the answer, we'll be honest with you, but we can also redirect you to someone who might know.
Yeah, thank you. And remember, you guys, there's hope and you're not alone. We're here for you. Good night now.